Welcome. What you are about to watch is not science fiction, and it is not folklore. It is a serious investigation into one of history's most compelling unresolved questions: the mystery of the Black Knight satellite, the 13,000-year-old object NASA cannot explain. Across the world, in universities, research institutes, and field excavations, serious scholars are wrestling with evidence that does not fit the accepted story. Evidence that has been documented, measured, and peer-reviewed, and that still has no satisfying conventional explanation. We are going to look at that evidence carefully, without prejudice in either direction, not dismissing what is extraordinary, but not accepting it without scrutiny either. The truth, as always, is in the details. In 1998, a Space Shuttle photograph appeared to show an unidentified dark object in polar orbit. Within years, the image was circulating online under the name the Black Knight satellite, accompanied by claims it was 13,000 years old, first detected by Nikola Tesla in 1899, and had been tracked by both the US and Soviet Union in 1960. NASA said it was a thermal blanket lost during a spacewalk. The internet disagreed. What makes the Black Knight phenomenon genuinely interesting and genuinely instructive is not the object in the photograph. It is the process by which several completely unrelated incidents, spanning 99 years and 4 continents, were stitched together by amateur researchers into a single coherent alien satellite narrative. Tesla's 1899 radio signals, long-delayed radio echoes, investigated in 1928, an unidentified object tracked in polar orbit in 1960, and a 1998 Space Shuttle photograph of a drifting thermal blanket. None of these events are connected. All of them are real. The story told about them is not. Understanding how that happened reveals more about the modern information environment than it does about extraterrestrial technology. This is where our investigation begins. Stay with us, because the further we go into the evidence, the more extraordinary it becomes. The story you think you know is only the surface. Beneath it lies something far more remarkable. Let us begin. Before we examine the specific evidence, we need to step back and understand the context. This case does not exist in isolation. It sits within the expanding frontier of unexplained cosmic phenomena, and to properly evaluate what we are looking at, we need to understand the broader picture that surrounds it. Space exploration has produced many surprises, but perhaps none as persistent as the anomalies that professional scientists describe and then struggle to explain. These are not the claims of amateur enthusiasts or fringe theorists. They are the published findings of researchers. At NASA, the European Space Agency, and major research universities, documented in peer-reviewed journals and presented at professional conferences, then quietly filed under requires further investigation while the scientific mainstream moves on to the next mission. The anomalies take different forms: unexpected geological features on planetary surfaces that do not match known formation processes, electromagnetic signals that arrive from directions where no known source exists, orbital mechanics of small bodies that deviate from the predictions of established gravitational models in ways that suggest an additional, undetected force. Each individual anomaly might be dismissed as an instrument artifact or a modeling error. But when anomalies accumulate across multiple missions, multiple instruments, and multiple research teams, the collective weight becomes harder to discount. Science advances precisely by taking anomalies seriously, by treating the things that do not fit the mold as invitations to improve the model rather than as embarrassments to be minimized. The history of physics is largely a history of anomalies. The precession of Mercury that Newtonian gravity could not explain, the cosmic expansion that Einstein refused to accept, the dark matter that bends light with no visible source. Each one, properly investigated, expanded the boundaries of what we understand. This context matters because it tells us something important. What we are about to investigate is not an isolated curiosity. It is part of a pattern that researchers in multiple fields have been independently documenting for decades, and patterns in science demand explanation. With that foundation in place, let us now turn to the specific case at hand. Now we reach the heart of the matter. The core evidence surrounding the Black Knight satellite, the 13,000-year-old object NASA cannot explain, is more extensive, more verified, and more troubling for conventional explanations than most people realize. Let us walk through it systematically, fact by fact, and allow the evidence to speak for itself. We are not going to speculate here. Every point that follows is documented in peer-reviewed publications, official archaeological records, or government archives that are publicly accessible. The question is not whether these facts are real. The question is what they mean. Consider this first extraordinary detail. Nikola Tesla reported receiving unusual rhythmic radio signals during experiments at his Colorado Springs laboratory in 1899, which he speculated might originate from Mars or another planet. Subsequent analysis has attributed the signals to natural astronomical radio sources, most likely Jupiter, which emits strong radio waves. Tesla's speculation was not about a satellite. Artificial satellites were 60 years in the future, and his account has no connection to any object in Earth orbit. This single data point, if taken in isolation, might be set aside. Anomalies happen, instruments malfunction, researchers make mistakes. But as we continue, you will see that this is not an isolated anomaly. It is part of a consistent and documented pattern. But that is only the beginning. Researchers also discovered, in 1927 and 1928, amateur radio operators across Europe detected long-delayed radio echoes, LDE, signals returning seconds after transmission with no known propagation mechanism. Norwegian engineer Georgian Hals documented the phenomenon. In 1973, Scottish astronomer Duncan Lunan reanalyzed the LDE data and proposed in the Journal of the British Interplanetary Society that the echo pattern originated from a probe near the star Epsilon Boötis. Lunan later retracted this interpretation and attributed it to a methodological error. Now, a skeptic might propose an alternative explanation for this, and that is entirely reasonable. We should always test alternative explanations before accepting extraordinary ones. The problem is that the alternative explanations, when examined carefully, create more problems than they solve. The mystery deepens when we examine. In 1960, both the United States and Soviet Union tracked an unidentified object in near-polar orbit during an early period of the space race. Neither nation claimed the object. Polar orbits were not used by either country's satellites at that time, making the object anomalous by the standards of 1960 spaceflight. Multiple prosaic explanations have been proposed, including debris from earlier launches and misidentified satellite fragments. No definitive identification of the 1960 object was publicly made. This is where the conventional account begins to strain. Each individual fact might be dismissed or minimized in isolation. But the cumulative weight of the evidence is another matter entirely. Perhaps most remarkable of all, during Space Shuttle mission STS-88 in December 1998, astronauts conducting an EVA to install the first U.S. module of the International Space Station lost a thermal blanket, a multi-layer insulation component, during the spacewalk. Multiple photographs of the drifting blanket were taken. The blanket is dark, irregular, and roughly the size of the object visible in the photographs later circulated as the Black Knight satellite. NASA EVA records and equipment loss documentation confirm the thermal blanket loss. Researchers who have examined this evidence have described it as genuinely difficult to explain within the accepted framework. These are not fringe commentators. They are credentialed academics publishing in mainstream journals, raising questions that the field has not yet satisfactorily answered. Then there is the matter of the name Black Knight was not a historical designation for any of the individual incidents it now encompasses. It appears to have been coined by amateur researchers in the early internet era to provide a single label for a narrative that combined Tesla's 1,899 signals, the 1928 long-delayed echoes, the 1960 polar orbit object, and the 1998 STS-88 photograph. None of the original sources use this name. The composite narrative treating these as a single object was assembled retrospectively from unrelated events. What makes this particularly significant is its independence from the previous points. This is not a case of one theory requiring another. These are separate lines of evidence converging on the same uncomfortable conclusion. Adding to the enigma is this finding: Duncan Lunan's 1973 paper, which is cited as the scientific foundation for the Black Knight satellite story, was a speculative analysis of the 1928 LDE data that Lunan himself later retracted. He stated that the Epsilon Boötis interpretation was based on a methodological error and that the LDE pattern did not, on reanalysis, indicate an artificial probe. The retraction received substantially less internet circulation than the original 1973 speculation, which continues to be cited as established science in Black Knight accounts. Taken together, these facts form a pattern that cannot be explained by coincidence, misidentification, or methodological error. Each piece of evidence has been examined by skeptics. Each has been subjected to alternative explanations, and in each case, the alternative explanation falls short of accounting for everything that has been documented. We are left with a body of evidence that demands explanation and an accepted narrative that does not provide one. This is where serious inquiry begins. Now that we have established the evidence, we need to examine the theories that researchers have proposed to explain the Black Knight satellite, the 13,000-year-old object NASA cannot explain. This is where the debate becomes most intense, because the theories reflect not just different interpretations of the same evidence, but fundamentally different assumptions about what is possible and what the past looked like. Understanding these theories is not just an academic exercise. Each one has been championed by serious researchers with genuine credentials, and each one captures something that the others miss. The truth, if it is ever established, will likely draw on elements of several. The first major explanation proposed by researchers holds that the ancient alien satellite theory holds that the Black Knight is a 13,000-year-old extraterrestrial probe in polar orbit, first detected by Tesla, tracked by Cold War superpowers, and photographed by NASA in 1998. This narrative combines all four separate incidents into a single continuous story. No peer-reviewed evidence supports any element of this synthesis, and the individual incidents it draws on are either prosaic, retracted, or unresolved for reasons unrelated to extraterrestrial origin. This interpretation has significant academic support and is backed by substantial evidence, but it is not without problems. Critics point out that it requires assumptions that go beyond what the evidence strictly supports, and that key predictions of this theory have not been confirmed by subsequent research. It remains contested, and the contest is productive. A rival school of thought argues that NASA explanation for the STS-88 photographs, that the object is a thermal blanket lost during the December 1998 EVA, is documented in mission records and equipment loss logs. The blanket's size, shape, and orbital position are consistent with the photographs. This explanation applies only to the 1998 images and does not address the 1960 unidentified polar orbit object, the 1928 LDEs, or Tesla's 1,899 signals, which are entirely separate incidents with separate proposed explanations. This theory is controversial, and deliberately so. Its proponents argue that the evidence demands an explanation outside the conventional framework. Critics counter that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and that the evidence presented, while suggestive, does not yet meet that standard. The debate continues in peer-reviewed literature. Perhaps the most unconventional theory suggests that the composite mythology explanation, that the Black Knight satellite is not a single object, but a narrative assembled from genuinely separate and unrelated incidents, is the most accurate description of how the story evolved. Each component incident is real. The signals, the echoes, the unidentified 1960 object, and the 1998 photograph all occurred. The claim that they represent a single 13,000-year-old alien artifact is a retrospective construction with no evidentiary basis linking the individual events to one another. What is striking about this debate is not merely that experts disagree. That is normal and healthy in science. What is striking is the quality of the disagreement. Serious researchers working from the same body of evidence, reaching genuinely different conclusions. That level of fundamental disagreement, when it persists over decades, is a signal that something important has not yet been understood. The question is not which of these theories is right. The question is whether any of them is right, or whether the truth is something that none of the current frameworks has yet been able to capture. The case surrounding the Black Knight satellite, the 13,000-year-old object NASA cannot explain, does not rest on speculation alone. What distinguishes this investigation from pure mythology is the existence of documented, physical, verifiable evidence, material that has been examined by credentialed researchers and whose authenticity is not seriously disputed. What is disputed is its interpretation. Let us review the most significant documented evidence as objectively as possible. We are not going to cherry-pick the data that supports a preferred conclusion. We are going to lay out what exists and let you draw your own assessment. Physical evidence supporting this account includes NASA STS-88 mission records confirm that a thermal blanket was lost during the EVA conducted on December 7, 1998. The equipment loss is documented in the mission log. Multiple photographs taken by astronauts during the EVA show the blanket at various distances, and its trajectory and appearance are consistent across the image sequence. The photographs identified online as the Black Knight satellite are the same sequence. No additional unidentified object was reported by the STS-88 crew or tracked by mission control during the mission. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Investigators have documented Duncan Lunan's 1973 analysis of the 1928 long-delayed radio echoes, published in the Journal of the British Interplanetary Society, was explicitly retracted by Lunan himself. He identified the error in his original analysis and stated that the Epsilon Boötis interpretation was not supported by the data on reanalysis. The original paper was speculative rather than conclusive even before the retraction. The 1928 LDE phenomenon remains scientifically unexplained, but has multiple proposed natural explanations, including ionospheric propagation effects. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. On-site analysis revealed Tesla's 1,899 signals houses 1,928 LDEs, the 1,960 unidentified polar orbit object, and the 1,998 STS-88 photographs have no documented connection to one another. No single tracking institution, no continuous observation record, and no physical object links them. They share no common origin beyond their incorporation into a single internet narrative decades after the last of them occurred. The Black Knight satellite is an instructive example of how internet aggregation of genuinely anomalous separate events can create a false unified narrative. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Each individual piece of evidence might, in principle, be explained away. A single anomalous artifact might be misidentified. A single anomalous date might reflect contamination. A single anomalous eyewitness account might reflect misperception. The question is whether all of the evidence can be explained away, and whether the explanations required are more or less plausible than the evidence itself. When multiple independent lines of inquiry converge on the same conclusion, that convergence is the most powerful signal in empirical science. And that is exactly what we are seeing here. We have examined the history, the evidence, and the theories surrounding the Black Knight satellite, the 13,000-year-old object NASA cannot explain. Now we need to ask the question that is sometimes overlooked in discussions of ancient mysteries. Why does this matter? What does it mean for us today? It would be easy to file this away as an interesting historical curiosity, a puzzle from a distant past with no bearing on our present lives. That would be a fundamental mistake. The questions raised by this case touch on issues that are directly relevant to who we are, where we came from, and what the human story actually looks like before the period covered by conventional history. The Black Knight satellite is an important case study in how internet mythology aggregates disparate real events into a false composite narrative. Each component incident is genuine: Tesla's signals, the 1928 LDEs, the unidentified 1960 polar object, the 1998 STS-88 photograph, but none are connected to one another. Lunan's retraction of the Epsilon Boötis interpretation receives a fraction of the circulation of the original speculation. NASA thermal blanket explanation is well documented but widely dismissed. The story continues to circulate, with 13,000-year figures unchanged. Understanding its construction is more valuable than debunking it. It illustrates precisely how anomalous event aggregation generates compelling false narratives in the absence of source criticism. Furthermore, the tools available to investigate these questions are advancing rapidly. Satellite imaging, ground-penetrating radar, ancient DNA analysis, isotopic tracing, and deep-sea sonar are all providing capabilities that previous generations of researchers could only dream of. Cases that were genuinely unresolvable 10 years ago are now open to new analysis, and the findings, consistently, are expanding rather than contracting the mystery. The investigation continues. New discoveries are being made. New analyses are being published. New voices are entering the conversation from disciplines that were not previously part of the discussion. The answers, when they come, and they will come, will not merely solve a historical puzzle. They will force a fundamental revision of assumptions that underpin our entire understanding of human history and human potential. We have now walked through the complete case of the Black Knight satellite, the 13,000-year-old object NASA cannot explain, from the historical record, through the physical evidence, across the competing theories, and into the modern significance of what remains unresolved. What the story of Black Knight satellite ultimately reveals is not just a historical puzzle. It is a mirror. It reflects our assumptions back at us, our assumptions about what ancient people were capable of, about how knowledge is gained and lost across the centuries, and about the relationship between what we know and what we merely think we know. The evidence presented in this documentary is real. The questions it raises are genuine. The debate among researchers is ongoing, and that is healthy. Science is not a set of conclusions. It is a process. And the process requires that we remain open to evidence that challenges what we thought we knew, however uncomfortable that challenge might be. If you came to this documentary as a skeptic, we hope the evidence gave you something to think about. If you came as a true believer, we hope the critical examination gave you a more nuanced picture. The truth, as always, lies in the evidence, not in what we want to be true. Thank you for watching. If this investigation sparked your curiosity, please subscribe to the channel. We publish new documentaries every week, covering the full range of historical mysteries that the mainstream has not yet adequately explained. Leave a comment below telling us which case you want us to investigate next. The conversation continues. The investigation never ends.